I'm Julie Zenner along with Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
The Duluth Art Institute is looking for a new exhibit space after St. Louis County rejected its proposal to stay in the Duluth Depot.
Essentia Health's merger with Marshfield Clinic is moving forward while a planned merger between two major health systems is off the table.
And we will visit FinnFest. It's underway at the deck in Duluth this week.
Those stories and voices of the region coming up next on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. And Denny, I know you like the heat. We sure had it this week.
Yeah, we did. It got a little bit warm in there, but I like summer.
It got a little warm, but we also had some much needed rain.
Yes, we did. That felt really good.
Cooled things off a little bit.
Right.
So anyway, let's begin with our headlines.
All right, thank you very much. Essentia Health and Marshfield Clinic announced this week the latest step in merging the two systems. The organizations have entered into an agreement to form an integrated regional health system serving Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan's Upper Peninsula, and North Dakota. Now, if regulators approve the merger, current Essentia CEO Dr. David Herman will serve as chief executive of a new parent company.
While one hospital system merger moves forward, another major hospital union was called off this week. Sanford Health, based in North Dakota, and Minnesota's Fairview Health Services are dropping plans to merge into one giant organization. The Fairview-Sanford merger was opposed by Minnesota nurses and by the University of Minnesota, whose teaching hospital is run by Fairview. We'll have more on how hospital mergers could impact healthcare later in our show.
The port of entry on the Minnesota-Canada border in International Falls will be modernized thanks to a major federal grant. The General Services Administration awarded a total of $28 million for pre-design of the new facility. The project will replace and expand the obsolete port of entry, resulting in better traffic flow.
And motorists should expect lane closures next week on the Bong Bridge between Superior and Duluth. The closures are due to routine inspection of the bridge, which is carrying a lot of extra traffic due to the Twin Ports Interchange project. One westbound lane will be closed next Monday and Tuesday, while an eastbound lane will be closed Wednesday and Thursday.
The Duluth Art Institute is looking for new exhibit space after a St. Louis County committee rejected its proposal for use of the depot. It's a surprising decision since the Art Institute has been a tenant at the St. Louis County Heritage and Art Center since it opened 50 years ago. Here to tell us more is Robin Washington, president of the Art Institute's Board of Directors, and Christina Woods is the executive director of the Duluth Art Institute. And thank you very much to both of you for being here. Christina, the Duluth Art Institute is really being forced to find a new home. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so the county has started an RFP process last year for all organizations in the building. And so it was submit your bid, submit what you want to pay, and they look at it and let you know if you can remain in the building. Mm-hmm. So we went into that process again this year, around April or May, and we were invited. So we want our space, and we find that it's a very good use of space to have the galleries up on the fourth floor.
Mm-hmm. Now, it could not have been a big surprise that the committee rejected the offer, since the proposal that you submitted didn't technically meet the requirements of the RFP, and RFPs sometimes are designed to weed people out rather than welcome them in. The proposed rent that you said of $361, well below the $497 for nonprofits that the county and the depot is wanting. Was it just kind of a Hail Mary pass?
Well, we have to go back to the imposition of the RFP process in the first place. So as you mentioned, we've been there for nearly half a century, and for nearly half a century we didn't have this process. Somebody at the county, and you can talk to the county attorney or whoever it may have been, found a state law that had not been enforced by County Attorney Mitchell, County Attorney Ford, or County Attorney Rubin. That said that for county properties, they had to engage in an RFP process, or at least to advertise one, and that they may or may not even accept anyone at the end of the process. They can just go on doing whatever they're doing on county-owned properties, with an exception very clearly stated for organizations that paid less than $15,000 a year in rent. And that's exactly where we were. We were underneath that threshold. So we really shouldn't have been in this process in the first place. Secondly, again, we have no idea why this is suddenly being implemented. Not to belabor it, but we only know of one organization in the state, of one property, where it's being enforced, and that's Ramsey County and the Landmark Center, beautiful place in St. Paul. Justice Blackmun's original study is there. Justice Blackmun's family is not paying, nickels and dimes for it, okay? It is not a self-supporting building. It never will be. It's beautiful, and it's for all of us. I love going there. And that's the other place where it's being enforced. And in fact, people have, the entities that are there, just like a woodworkers guild, okay, not major organizations, don't actually engage in bidding every year is what I understand too. So it seems like an arbitrary decision to do this. We've asked several times why, and we've asked, never got an answer, why the part about organizations paying less than $15,000 is not being really adhered to.
Christina, when you consider your budget, how much can the Duluth Art Institute commit to paying?
We have offered $3.61 per square foot, and that's where I feel strongly that we can commit to that.
Don't you have to
and
respect
let me
the
elaborate
county's
it.
budget too, though? I mean, they say that even at the $9 or $4.97, that they're still losing money with nonprofits in there.
Well, good business practice, okay? We were paying a very low rate, $1.20 per square foot. That's what the organizers, the founders of the Depot as an Arts Institute created, Arts Center 50 years ago. It was always meant to be publicly supported. The rest of the money that we save from that, if you will, goes to art, goes to artists, supports the community, brings art to the community. But the point is, even if you said, we got to do this, we got to bring up the rents, okay? Talk to us in the first place and say, here's where we want to be, here's where we are now. You're talking about going from $120 per square foot to $497 in 2 years. Would you pay that kind of rent increase?
So has the Depot then told you in strong terms that their increased rate is non-negotiable?
Well, this is what doesn't make any sense, is that they said, here is the required amount. Put it in your RFP. Commit to paying for it, right? $4.97 per square foot, okay? And then, if accepted, renegotiate. I never heard of, I'm sorry, I've been in, I've run businesses and been in major positions and all and handled large budgets. I never heard of negotiation after you agree to an amount.
And we should say that we did invite St. Louis County to be on the
Right.
program and talk about this, but they declined that invitation. So just for the record, they did have an invitation. Christine, the county raised some concerns over the current space being incompatible with what you do, because there are places that people walk in, walk out, walk through, and they're concerned about the security of the art. Have there been issues associated with that in your mind?
Yeah, so when the depot management started bringing in more events in the Great Hall, we did have some problem solving to do, and we brought up our concerns and we worked on our concerns and we resolved all the concerns. And so now what I understand is that it's more about the fire escape that people need to walk through. Well, we know that the space we're bidding on is not secured in the same way that other spaces are, because people need to be able to exit the fourth floor in case there's a fire. And every museum has a fire egress. Everybody walks through a gallery. We've not ever been concerned about the artwork safety, because it's our business to make sure that we do a really good job of securing artwork to a wall or on a pedestal. And so it's a bit arbitrary and a little confusing about why they would use that as a point of concern.
And
It's an art museum. People visit. That's what happens.
Robin, Christina, with that, we have to leave it. Thank you so very much for being here tonight.
Thank you both.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
It's time now for Voices of the Region, when we hear from an area journalist about stories they are covering. Our guest is Heidi Holtan from KAXE Radio in Grand Rapids, where the Blandin paper mill strike is dominating the news.
The big story of our region is the UPM Blandin Paper Company strike. The Teamsters Local 346 went on strike on Saturday, July 15th. This is the first strike ever authorized in Blandin's history. They have been a major employer in Grand Rapids since 1901. The 166 employees on strike are asking for a number of things in their negotiations: better wages, an elimination of a two-tier system that makes it difficult to retain new employees, and changes to staffing levels. Overtime hours have spiked, according to the Teamsters Union President Jeff Ovison. He thinks this is leading to a dangerous working condition for overtired production workers. On Friday, July 21st, there was a public rally for the strike in the heart of Grand Rapids on Highway 2. Current and retired paper mill workers, Teamster union reps, and people from other unions like local teachers and county employees and members of the public were there in solidarity. Also there were DFL legislators Representative Dave Lizelgard of Aurora and Senator Grant Hochschild of Hermantown. Zach Radzak was there. He's the secretary-treasurer of the Teamsters Local 346.
If you've ever heard me talk, you know I don't get into politics in front of my members too deep. But I swear to goodness, I saw the most American thing I've seen in the past 10 years happen today. It was a man walking across the street with a picket sign on his shoulder. And that is America, boys and girls. That is what this country was founded on, right there. And if we don't start fighting for our middle class back, boys and girls, friends and family, we will lose it. Because we have been on a fast track in the downward spiral in this country for the past 30 years. Taking wages from our pockets and putting them in corporations, and that's over. We're done with it in northern Minnesota, and UPM, you better hear it over in Finland that you better bring the money back to Grand Rapids, Minnesota.
The DFL legislators at the rally gave fiery speeches to lift up the crowd. Here's Senator Hochschild.
We are in a moment right now in America, and in particular in Minnesota, whether it's the UPS, whether it's you guys here at Blandin, our hospitals. I know in our mines in my district at North Shore, they unionized for the first time after 7 attempts to unionize. We are having a union moment in this state and in this country, and you guys are a part of it. And what we need these folks to understand, the bigger these corporations grow, the bigger these organizations grow, the more disconnected they get from the reality of what's going on at the ground level. It doesn't move without the Teamsters. Paper doesn't move. Trucks don't move. You guys move it.
UPM Blandin Paper Company has issued a statement saying that we are now going to take the time to review both proposals and consider potential paths to finding an agreement. Representative Lizelgard urged the workers to keep striking.
I'm going to tell you, sometimes you just got to drop the plow. And that's what you guys are doing right now. That is the truth. Your moment is right now. I've never been on a strike. I've stood with you. I've stood with my brothers and sisters on the strike line, but I've never done it myself. What you guys are doing right now is part of the motion that is crossing the United States, but it's right now. What Grant said is 100% true. Corporations are making money. They're taking your health care from you. They're taking your health care from you. They divide and they conquer. And what you're doing, I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, you voted for Trump, you voted for Biden. The point is that you're standing right here in solidarity.
The Twin Ports' two major health systems have both announced plans to merge with other healthcare organizations. It's part of a national trend of consolidation and bigger health companies. The merging companies typically tout improved care and better access for patients, but is that really the case? Here with some thoughts on merger mania is Dr. Lacey Loomer, Assistant Professor of Healthcare Management at UMD's Leibovitz School of Business and Economics. And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Why is it that talk of healthcare mergers is really on the rise right now?
Yeah, so it's really been a trend that we've been seeing for the past 2 decades, but I think with COVID really having financial distress on hospital systems, more and more they're looking for options to kind of bolster their revenues and at the end of the day profits.
So is it more the health of the bottom line, do you think, or is it the health of the patients driving these kinds of discussions?
I think there's really 2 stories going on. I think that at the end of the day, without profit, there's no mission. Without margin, there's no mission. Hospitals really like to say, we're here for the patients, we want to have better quality, but when you look at what happens after the fact, not a lot of attention gets showcased on what happens after these big mergers go forward. And really what happens is patient access suffers by way of higher prices.
The Office of Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison will need to review any merger. How soon will that take place if there is a merger?
Yeah, so if we look at what happened with this last merger between Sanford and Fairview, Keith Ellison's office really wanted them to take a little bit more time to do the analysis that needed to be done. And what's happening in these mergers want it to happen fast. We're not sure with this proposed merger between Essentia and Marshfield how Wisconsin might play a role in that regulatory side of moving things faster or slower. I would say it's a bit different because the medical school played a really big role in sort of stopping that merger between Fairview and Sanford. If we look to Wisconsin, they've actually had a lot of big mergers happening in the last year or so, so that might be a sign that it might go through a little bit faster for them.
So historically, do mergers lead to price increases for patients?
Yes, unequivocally, yes.
You had mentioned that earlier, that that's one way in which access becomes more limited because the prices go up.
Yep.
But one of the arguments for the mergers is that it really broadens the type of specialists and the type of services that healthcare providers are able to provide, not just in their own communities, but broadly out into like more rural areas.
For sure. So if you look at some of the maps of the proposed mergers, you might see, well, we have access to more hospitals, a bigger number of hospitals and clinics. But an alarming thing is also happening is that in these rural hospitals, because of, again, profits and financial viability, they're deciding to let go of services that might not bring as much revenue. So that's maternity services, that's more services with kind of specialized technology that rural hospitals and the patients that live in those areas might not have access to. They might have to travel a really long way.
I understand the Minnesota Nurses Association would review the impact of any merger. How important would that review be?
That would be really essential. Nurses fought really hard for that last contract. We probably all followed it. And with this proposed merger, or any proposed merger, what happens is you have less employment options. You have less places that you could maybe go seek an outside option. Well, if you have one mega merger, you have nurses really just stuck with that one employer, and it could lead to very drawn out negotiations again.
Are the days of small community hospitals and clinics essentially over at this point?
So I wouldn't say over, but they really are struggling financially, and I think a lot of the talk with these alternative payment models is we need more volume. Well, the fact of the matter is rural communities, we're not really getting more population there. So we need to think a little bit more creatively about how to support these communities and their hospitals. But if you look in Minnesota, really the trend is that these rural hospitals are affiliating, joining systems to stay afloat.
Mm-hmm. And what role does telemedicine have in that in terms of being able to reach out into those rural areas?
Sure, telemedicine is really important for gaining access to those specialties for rural communities. Mm-hmm. But we also need to think about, we have a broadband access issue. A lot of the rural communities up in northern Minnesota, their access to video chat or get on the patient portal is not like it is here in Duluth. So we can tout telemedicine as an access to more increased specialties, but the realized access might actually be inequitable for rural folks.
Thank you.
Dr. Lacey Loomer, an exciting time to be teaching healthcare management. So good luck up at UMD.
Absolutely.
Thank you
you
very
so
much.
much.
Well, the Twin Ports is hosting FinnFest this week at the deck. From art, food, music, and educational programs, the festival aims to showcase the best of Finland. Producer Megan McGarvey joined in on the festivities to bring us this story.
Finnish artists, speakers, vendors, and festival goers flock to the shores of Lake Superior for the long-awaited return of FinnFest.
So FinnFest is now celebrating its 40th anniversary, its 40th birthday, and it's returning to Duluth. So it was last time in Duluth in 2008, but throughout its 40 years of traditions around the United States. So it has been mainly initiated as a gathering for Finns, people who are coming from Finland or whose ancestry is from there, and they feel that they have a deep connection to all things cultural from Finland, and they want to keep that bond strong.
Any cultural history you need to keep alive. You need to keep it breathing. You need the language to be spoken, you need the food to be eaten, you need the cultural traditions to be enjoyed, right? If that's going to live on. I also think we learn from that, right? We learn from those traditions. 100 years ago, Duluth was known as Little Helsinki. Not many people know that. There were so many Finnish immigrants who came here from abroad. They showed up in Canal Park, and Canal Park at that time was called Finntown. It wasn't the tourist sector, it was the immigrant quarter. It was where you got off the boat and you got one of those jobs in the mines and the mills and the docks. And in many ways, those immigrants helped build the city. And so when I look at that history around Duluth, it's really in the fabric, it's in the water here of both Finnish culture and broadly Nordic culture here. We see it in some key places.
20% of people in this area originate in some way, they have a connection to Finland, which is unbelievable. Nowhere else in the United States can one say that. And then bringing in all the other Nordic, our brothering and sistering cultures, say Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, even more. So I think that it is a homecoming, and I think that because of that origin, but also the kind of strong appreciation that Finland has with the state of Minnesota and vice versa, I think that it's a spectacular opportunity, you know, for growth of the festival, but also collaboration with the city of Duluth.
Along with cultural vendors and Finnish films, festival goers also have unique education opportunities, such as taking a tour on the Great Lakes research vessel, the Blue Heron.
So here we are on the back deck. This is this is actually one of the ship's advantages is this large back deck where we can fill this up with equipment that's going to be deployed or equipment that we've recovered from the lake. And so it gives us some flexibility that we wouldn't have if we had a smaller working deck. This is our water sampler. So we can use this to not only take water samples, but to get water characteristics from this electronic package on the bottom. And we'll use this probably almost on every cruise. Let's go on inside. Well, you know, particularly for FinnFest, you know, having people understand Finnish culture and the Finnish history and its large impact on the Northlands, that's important. And the same thing applies for us. You know, we're at a university, obviously, and a good portion of our cruises are actually taking classes out so that they, again, can understand their surroundings.
When I think about the DNA of FinnFest, there's always been this commitment to learning and really like scholarship happening here. We have experts from around the world talking about and teaching on these topics. And so it isn't simply folk dancing and good food and music. It's much more of this experience to come in and how do we learn together and how do we play together. As a Duluthian, really committed to sort of bringing FinnFest back and making sure it is such a great expression of the Nordic culture that is here and learning from Finland from afar. What is modern day Finland and how do we sort of learn from that here, from our education system to why it's the happiest country in the world again and again and again, and all these other ways that we can sort of draw on Finnish culture.
It feels like that is, there's such a good terrain here, so it's quite motivating to want to look forward from this spot where we are now with the city of Duluth, with the festival, with the long history also that, you know, the festival was here in 2008 and everybody has a good memory. The festival has the organizers from those years, but also the deck has a really good memory from back those years. So then why not see where it can be taken now for the next 5 years?
The FinnFest fun continues into the weekend with a special performance from Finland's best-selling musical artist, Somoli Udelman, Saturday night at the Deck.
And Denny, don't look now, but it's the last weekend of July,
Yes.
so make sure you get out and enjoy some summer weather.
Well, I tell you, it's starting to go very fast now. Is it one more month to go?
One more month to go and then a really nice fall. So
I hope so.
Anyway, for Dennis and the crew here at Almanac North, I'm Julie Zenner. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.